It was early morning in Owerri city. A gentle light was spreading across the sky as a black luxury car waited outside a five-star hotel. Inside one of the hotel rooms, Mr. Okon sat quietly on the edge of the bed for a moment. He remained silent. He had arrived in the country late the previous night. 12 years. That was how long he had been away. He had left as a young man filled with ambition, searching for a better life outside the country. Now he was back, but no longer the same person who had left. He had become a successful and wealthy CEO. He checked his wristwatch and slowly got to his feet. "Today I will go home to visit my mother," he said to himself. He had intended to travel home the night before, but it was already too late, so he decided to wait until morning. A few minutes later, he came down from the hotel. Outside, his driver was already waiting. The SUV was black, spotless, and shining under the morning light. The driver opened the door respectfully. "Good morning, sir," the driver said. Mr. Okon simply nodded and got into the vehicle. "Let's go," he said. The driver closed the door and took his seat. The SUV merged into the busy morning traffic. As the vehicle moved through the city, Mr. Okon sat in the back seat, looking out of the window. But his thoughts were not on the city around him. His mind was somewhere far away. He remembered the small house where he grew up. He remembered his mother, Mrs. Madara. He also remembered his younger sister, Cheetah. Before he left the country, life had been very difficult, yet he had made them a promise. "I will not forget you both. I will take care of you," he had said before leaving. And he kept that promise, though not immediately. During his first 3 years abroad, Okon struggled greatly. He worked day and night just to survive. There were days when, after paying rent and buying food, he was left with almost nothing. Still, he refused to give up. Eventually, things began to improve. His work started to grow, and better opportunities came his way. Slowly, his life began to change. That was when he started sending money back home. Month after month, for about 8 to 9 years, he never failed once. He consistently sent money to his mother through his sister. His mother was elderly and did not understand banking systems or modern phones. She could barely use modern technology and did not even own a phone. Because of this, Okon always communicated through his sister. But later, things changed. His sister got married and moved out of the family home. She no longer stayed with their mother. From that point, it became harder for Okon to reach his mother directly. Eventually, he stopped hearing his mother's voice completely. He only spoke with his sister. And every time he called, his sister would say the same thing. "Don't worry, mother is fine. I just visited her recently. She also sends her regards." Sometimes, Okon would insist and say, "Please, whenever you go to see her, just call me so I can speak with her myself." But his sister always had an excuse. "Ah, the network there is very bad. My phone has no signal. Calls don't go through in that area." At times, she would even add, "I tried calling you while I was there, but it didn't connect." And just like that, Okon had no choice but to believe her. He trusted that they were fine. He believed they were safe. He assumed they were living comfortably since he had been sending money every month. That belief stayed with him until this very morning. As the SUV continued through traffic, his eyes slowly scanned the roadside. Then suddenly, something caught his attention and made him sit upright. At first, he wasn't certain what he was seeing. He looked again. A woman was sitting by the roadside. She looked old and exhausted, holding a small bowl in her hands as she begged for help. Okon's heart dropped. He leaned closer to the window. As the car moved nearer, he narrowed his eyes, trying to see her clearly from a distance. "No, no," he whispered under his breath. Something about her face looked familiar. He quickly tapped the driver's seat. "Stop the car," he said firmly. The driver immediately slowed down and pulled over. Ocon did not wait. He opened the door and stepped out quickly. The sounds of the traffic faded as his attention locked onto the woman ahead. He walked closer, step by step. Then he stopped. His expression went still. It was his mother, Mrs. Madara. She sat there weak and frail, holding the bowl close to her chest. Her clothes were worn and faded. Her body showed clear signs of long-term neglect and poor living conditions. Ocon tried to speak, but no words came out at first. Then finally, he said softly, "Mother." The woman slowly lifted her head. Their eyes met. For a moment, she froze. Then her hands began to shake. "Ocon," she said in a weak voice. Tears filled her eyes as she tried to stand, but her strength failed her. Ocon rushed forward immediately and held her. "Don't stand, please don't stand," he said urgently. He looked around, clearly shaken and confused. "Why are you here? What happened?" Mrs. Madara tried to respond, but her voice was too weak. Before she could explain, Ocon carefully helped her up. "Come with me," he said. He guided her back to the SUV. People nearby watched in silence. He helped his mother into the vehicle and sat beside her. She was trembling, overwhelmed by emotion after seeing the son she had not seen in 12 years. Ocon turned to the driver. "Turn around," he instructed. "Head to the nearest hospital." Without asking questions, the driver obeyed immediately. As the vehicle rejoined traffic, Ocon held his mother's hand tightly. Yet one thought kept repeating in his mind. If I have been sending money all these years, why is my mother in this condition? At the hospital, Ocon waited in the reception area. His mother had already been taken in for examination. His thoughts would not settle. After a while, a doctor approached him. "Are you the one who brought in the elderly woman?" the doctor asked. "Yes, doctor. She is my mother," Ocon replied. The doctor nodded calmly. "There is no serious illness," he said. "But she needs to be admitted for observation and proper care until tomorrow. Please proceed with everything she needs," Ocon said immediately. The doctor gave a small nod. "We will start right away." Soon after, Mrs. Madara was moved into a ward and treatment began. Ocon stayed in the waiting area, watching the direction she had been taken. After some time, the doctor passed by again. Ocon quickly stood up and approached him. "Doctor, how is she?" he asked. The doctor responded in a calm and reassuring tone. "Don't worry. She will be fine. She is responding well to treatment." Ocon exhaled in relief. "Thank you, doctor," he said. "Can I see her?" "Yes, you may go in now," the doctor replied. Ocon nodded and entered the ward. His mother was lying on the bed, resting. She still looked very weak. He stood quietly for a moment, simply watching her. Many questions filled his mind, but he knew this was not the time. She needed rest. He slowly stepped back and sat on a chair beside her bed. After a few minutes, he took out his phone and called his sister. The phone rang repeatedly, but there was no answer. He tried again. Still no response. He looked at the screen for a moment. "I already told her I was coming back to the country, so she knows I'm here. Why isn't she picking up?" he said quietly. He leaned back in the chair, his eyes returning to his mother. His face carried confusion and deep pain. "How did it come to this?" he whispered to himself. "Why would my own sister do this?" The room remained quiet, with only the steady sound of the hospital machine beside the bed. The next morning, Mrs. Madara slowly opened her eyes. She looked around the room, then turned her head. Her eyes landed on someone sitting beside her bed. She looked again. It was Ocon. It was truly him. He was there, asleep on a chair next to her. For a moment, she just stared at him in silence, her emotions overwhelming her. Slowly, she sat up. "Okon," she called softly. Okon shifted slightly and opened his eyes. He looked up. "Mother, you are awake," he said. She reached out and gently touched his face. "My son, is it really you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Or am I dreaming?" She kept looking at him, tears forming in her eyes. "I've missed you," she said quietly. Okon gave a soft smile. "It's me, Mother," he replied gently. "I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere again." Mrs. Madara slowly shook her head, holding his hand tightly. my son," she repeated. At that moment, the doctor entered the room. "Good morning," he said. Okon stood up. "Good morning, doctor." The doctor examined Mrs. Madara briefly, then nodded. "You are doing well," he said. "You are fine now. You can be discharged today." She gave a small nod. "Thank you, doctor," she said softly. "You're welcome," the doctor replied. Later that morning, after discharge, they left the hospital. Okon helped his mother into the car, but instead of going straight home, he took her to a quiet restaurant. They sat down, and food was served in front of them. Mrs. Madara looked at the meal for a moment before beginning to eat. At first slowly, then faster. It was clear she had not eaten properly in a long time. Okon watched her silently, his heart heavy. After a while, she looked up at him, confusion in her eyes. "My son," she asked softly, "how are you managing life over there?" Okon looked at her, slightly surprised. She continued. "How did you even come back home?" she asked. "Chita told me you were struggling. She said you were stuck." Okon paused. "What?" he said. Mrs. Madara nodded gently. "She said you were not doing well," she added. "That is why I haven't received any money from you for almost 3 years." She paused, then continued softly. "I couldn't continue my small business either because of my age." Okon's eyes widened. "For 3 years," he repeated. "Yes," she replied. "After your sister got married and left, everything became harder." Okon leaned back, his thoughts spinning. "I have been sending money every month," he said firmly but calmly. "I never stopped." Mrs. Madara looked confused. "My son, nothing has reached me for a long time," she said quietly. Okon shook his head. "I called Chita many times," he said. "Every month, right after sending money. But she always told me you were fine." Silence fell between them. The truth slowly became clear. Okon looked away, processing everything. Now it all made sense, the missed calls, the excuses, the repeated words. "Don't worry, Mother is fine." Mrs. Madara held her chest. "You mean," she started, but stopped. Okon nodded slowly. Neither of them needed to say it fully. They both understood. Chita had been dishonest for years. They sat in silence for a while. Then Okon stood up. "Mama, let's go," he said gently. He helped her up and guided her back to the car. Before returning to the hotel, they stopped at a clothing store selling ready-made outfits. He led her inside and asked her to choose whatever she liked. She looked at the expensive clothes, then turned to him. "My son, are you sure? These look very expensive," she said softly. Okon smiled. "Mama, I'm here now to take care of you," he replied. "Nothing is too expensive for my mother." For the first time in many years, she smiled. She slowly chose a few simple but elegant dresses. He paid for everything, and the staff packed the items into bags. As they left and settled back into the car, Okon leaned back, deep in thought. He turned to her. "Mama, you said you haven't seen Chita for over 3 years, he asked quietly. Mrs. Madara sighed deeply. "My son," she said sadly, I don't know what happened to your sister. She changed after her marriage. She shook her head. She hasn't visited me in over 3 years. They even moved from their old house without telling me. Okon frowned. I only found out when I went there myself, she added. Okon exhaled slowly. He murmured. Then he spoke again. That's strange, he said. 2 years ago, I was sending her money to build a modern house. I also sent money for land. Mrs. Madara looked at him in confusion. Okon took out his phone and opened his gallery. These are the pictures she sent me, he said. He showed her images, foundation, walls rising, roofing, and finally a completed building. Mrs. Madara stared at the screen, shocked. This, she whispered. Okon swallowed. I was actually going to that house yesterday when I saw you, he said. I thought you were already living there. The car fell into heavy silence. Then suddenly, Mrs. Madara broke down in tears. What happened to my daughter? She cried. How did the child I carried for 9 months become so heartless toward her own mother? Her voice shook. All these years I thought you were the one struggling, she continued. I kept praying for my children. Tears streamed down her face. I didn't know my prayers had already been answered, she said. Okon moved closer and held her gently. Mama, it's okay, he said softly. It's over now. He held her hand firmly. I'm here now, he added. We are going to that house. I want to see what she did with the home I built for you. The cars started moving again. They drove for nearly 2 hours. Finally, they arrived. Okon stepped out and looked around carefully. Mama, please stay inside, he said gently. She nodded. Okon scanned the surroundings in silence. His eyes scanned the entire area, and his expression slowly changed. He took a few steps forward, then stopped. This place, he muttered under his breath. He looked again, and then once more. His heartbeat began to rise. Is this not the same land Chita bought? He said quietly to himself. But there was nothing there. No building, no construction, no blocks, just empty land covered in overgrown grass. Okon walked further down the street, checking carefully. He examined nearby houses and surroundings. Everything confirmed it. This was the correct location. He took out his phone again and dialed Chita's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. No answer. His jaw tightened. He stood still for a moment, then turned and walked back to the car. He got in beside his mother and let out a deep breath. Mama, he said slowly, I don't even know what to think anymore. She looked at him with concern. The land is empty, he continued. There is nothing there, no house, nothing, just grass. Mrs. Madara covered her mouth as tears quickly fell again. My God, she whispered. Okon gently placed his hands on her shoulders. Mama, please don't cry, he said calmly. I don't want your blood pressure to rise. She nodded slowly, trying to compose herself. She murmured, wiping her tears. Okon leaned back in his seat, thinking rapidly. Then he took out his phone again and searched for a service department. Within minutes, he found a suitable place and made a booking. Mama, you will stay somewhere comfortable for now, he said. The driver started the car, and they drove to the apartment. When they arrived, Okon stepped out first and helped his mother inside. The place was clean, quiet, and well arranged. Everything had already been prepared, food, a clean bed, running water, and a peaceful environment. Okon turned to her. You will rest here, he said gently. Everything you need is available. Mrs. Madara slowly looked around. Tears filled her eyes again, but this time they were softer. My son, she said. Okon held her hand. I am here now, he replied firmly. But deep inside, his mind was unsettled, because he now understood one thing clearly. This was not a mistake. Chita would have to explain everything. After several unanswered calls, Mr. Okon sat quietly in his hotel room, staring at his phone. Still nothing. No replies. No returned calls. Then he remembered something. He had funded his sister's event planning business and helped her set it up. He exhaled slowly as a plan began to form in his mind. He placed the phone on the table and leaned back. He now knew how to reach her. A few weeks later, far from the hotel in another part of Wari, Cheta received a phone call in her office. "Good afternoon, Ma," the caller said. "My boss is planning a major event. We were told you are the best event planner for the job." Cheta immediately became attentive. "A major event?" she asked. "Yes, Ma. A very important one. He would like to meet you personally." "All right," she replied. "When and where?" "There is a quiet restaurant in town. I will send you the address. He will meet you there this evening." Cheta paused briefly, then nodded. "Okay. I will be there," she said. That evening, Cheta arrived at the restaurant. It was calm, neatly arranged, with soft background music. She looked around and noticed a man in a well-fitted suit sitting at a table. He stood as she approached. "Good evening, Ma," he said. "Good evening," she replied as she sat down. "My boss will join us shortly," he added. Cheta nodded. "All right, let's wait." They spoke briefly about the supposed event, but after a few minutes, the man's phone rang. He checked it and stood up. "Excuse me, Ma. I'll be right back," he said. "Okay," she replied. He walked away. Cheta remained seated alone. A few seconds passed. Then she felt someone behind her. A voice spoke. "Good evening, Cheta." Her body froze instantly. She recognized the voice. Slowly, she turned around. Their eyes met. It was Okon. He stood there, watching her directly. Cheta could not move. Her heartbeat increased. "Brother," she said softly, unsure. Okon calmly pulled out a chair and sat down. "Yes," he replied. Cheta looked around, confused, realizing what had just happened. It was a setup. Okon leaned slightly forward. "You refuse to answer my calls," he said. Cheta lowered her gaze. "I've been busy," she tried to explain. "Don't even try," Okon cut in firmly. She swallowed and went silent. He took out his phone and placed it on the table. "Listen carefully," he said. He pressed play. A voice recording filled the space. It was Cheta. "Don't worry, Mother is fine. I visited her recently. She sends her regards." Cheta's eyes widened. She looked at him immediately. Okon did not look away. "I have many more recordings like this," he said. The audio stopped. Silence followed. Okon's tone became heavier. "You kept assuring me she was fine," he said, "but I found our mother on the roadside weeks ago. She was begging for food." Cheta's lips parted, but no words came out. "She was hungry," he continued. "Weak. Alone." Tears formed in Cheta's eyes. "I have been sending money every month for years," Okon said firmly. "I never stopped." He leaned forward slightly. "So tell me, Cheta, where did the money go?" I didn't mean for it to become like this," she said weakly. "But it did," Okon replied. She shook her head. "I can explain," she said quietly. Okon's expression stayed firm. "Then explain," he said sharply. The room went silent again. Cheta's hands trembled as she struggled to speak. "It's not as simple as you think," she said. Okon leaned back slightly. "Then make me understand," he replied. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "My husband," she began, then paused, as if the words were heavy. Okon remained silent, waiting. "At the beginning of our marriage, everything was fine," she continued quietly. "He was kind, patient, responsible. I believed I had made the right choice," she said, giving a faint, broken smile. "But after a few years, things slowly began to change. Not all at once, just little by little." Okon kept his eyes fixed on her, listening closely. "He started taking interest in everything," she continued. "How I spent money, who I talked to, even small personal decisions." She wiped her face. "At first, I didn't think much of it. I assumed it was just concern." She paused briefly. But it didn't stop. Her voice lowered. "He began insisting that as my husband, he should control all the money coming into the house." Okon's expression tightened slightly, but he said nothing. "When you sent money," she continued, "he started asking questions. First, it was just the amount. Then he began demanding full access." She looked down at her hands. "I resisted at first," she said. "I told him the money was for my mother. That it was your effort." She shook her head slowly. But he didn't see it that way. A heavy silence followed between them. He would say things like, "Everything that enters this house belongs to this house." Okon exhaled slowly, his jaw tightening. Cheta continued, her voice unstable. "Over time, he gained access to my phone, my banking app, everything. He even stopped me from going to the bank." Her hands trembled slightly. "I lost control completely." Okon studied her more closely now. "The money you sent for our mother, for the house," she said, her voice breaking. "He took it." She closed her eyes for a moment. "He used it for his own plans and needs, things I couldn't question. I lived in fear," she added quietly. She looked up at Okon. "He always warned me that if I disobeyed him or exposed anything, he would end the marriage." Her voice dropped further. "And he would take the children away." Okon's expression shifted. That part clearly affected him deeply. "I didn't know what to do," she said. "I kept hoping I could fix it quietly. That maybe things would improve." She shook her head slowly. "But they never did." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "And with time, everything became worse." Okon remained silent. "I knew what was happening to our mother was wrong," she continued, pain in her voice. "I knew it every single day." She pressed her lips together. "But I was already trapped." A long silence followed. Then she spoke again, barely above a whisper. "I couldn't tell you because I knew you would confront him." She looked directly at Okon. "And if you did, everything would have collapsed." Okon did not look away. "My marriage, my children's home," she said. "Everything would have fallen apart." Her shoulders dropped. "So I stayed silent. Even when I shouldn't have." Tears flowed freely now. "It's all my fault," she said. Okon's expression shifted slightly. "I saw what was happening," she continued. "I knew it was wrong, but I stayed." Her voice finally broke. "I was too afraid to leave a man who was slowly destroying my family." The words hung in the air. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Okon leaned back slowly, absorbing everything. The anger he had carried earlier was no longer sharp. It had changed into something heavier, understanding, pain, and quiet disappointment. He looked at his sister again, truly looked at her, beyond the words and into the burden she had carried. For the first time since the confrontation began, the situation no longer looked like simple betrayal. Moments later, Okon stood up slowly. "Come with me," he said quietly. "I want you to see our mother." Cheta hesitated briefly, then nodded. "All right," she said. They left the restaurant together and got into the car. The journey was silent. No music, no conversation, only heavy quiet between them. But it wasn't an empty silence. It was filled with thought, confusion, and reflection as they each tried to process everything that had been revealed. After some time, the car arrived at the apartment building. Okon stepped out first and led the way inside. Cheta followed slowly, uncertain of what awaited her next. They passed through the lobby and climbed the stairs without speaking. When they reached the door, Okon paused for a moment before opening it. He turned the handle gently and pushed it open. Inside, Mrs. Madara was resting quietly on the bed. For a few seconds, Cheta stood frozen at the doorway. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She just looked. Then something inside her broke. "Mother," she whispered. Her voice trembled. Before anyone could react, she rushed forward and dropped to her knees beside the bed. Tears came instantly. "Mother, forgive me," she said, holding her hand tightly. "Please forgive me." Mrs. Madara opened her eyes fully, startled by the sudden emotion. "Cheta," she said slowly, trying to understand what she was seeing. Cheta shook her head repeatedly, crying uncontrollably. "I'm sorry, Mother," she said. "I failed you. I failed you completely." Mrs. Madara slowly sat up, her expression softening. "Calm down, my child," she said gently. "Breathe first." But Cheta could not stop. "I should have taken better care of you," she cried. "I should have protected you. I should have done something." Through tears, she continued explaining everything she had already told Okon, how her husband became controlling, how he took over her bank accounts, how he threatened to end the marriage if she disobeyed, how he moved them away so no one could trace them, and how he became physically abusive. Finally, she revealed the truth fully, showing the emotional and physical damage she had endured, including bruises on her back and hidden marks across her body. Silence followed those words. Okon, who had been standing a short distance away, exhaled slowly. Mrs. Madara closed her eyes for a moment, as though trying to process the full weight of everything she had just heard. Then she opened them again. "My child," she said softly, "what has happened is painful, but do not carry all of it alone." Cheta shook her head as tears continued to fall. "It is still my fault," she insisted. "I saw what was happening and I stayed silent." Okon finally stepped forward. "Enough," he said firmly, though not aggressively. Both women turned to look at him. He took a breath, trying to steady his emotions. His tone softened as he looked at Cheta. "I need you to understand something clearly," he said. "What happened to you was not acceptable." He paused. "The only responsibility you carry is that you stayed silent. You chose to remain in an abusive marriage that was already falling apart. You allowed your mother to suffer while trying to protect something that was already breaking." He continued firmly. "Who told you it was right to stay in that situation? And when he threatened to take your children, did you forget that you had legal options?" He paused again. "What was done to our mother was not acceptable." Cheta lowered her head. Okon stood quietly for a moment. His jaw tightened, not from anger alone, but from deep reflection. When he spoke again, his voice was calmer. "I saw Mother on the roadside," he said slowly, "and I still cannot remove that image from my mind." A quiet pain crossed his face. "And now I understand it was not just neglect. It was deeper than that." The room fell silent again. Mrs. Madara slowly placed her hand over both of theirs. "I am alive today," she said gently, "and both of you are here with me. That is what matters now." Cheta wiped her face slowly, still trembling. For the first time, her breathing began to steady. The next morning, Okon did not delay. He went directly to the authorities with Cheta's statement and the evidence they had gathered. After a formal review, the police opened an investigation into allegations of domestic violence, threats and intimidation, theft, fraud, and unauthorized access to a bank account. The husband was arrested later that same day. He was taken in for questioning, and the evidence confirmed a clear pattern of long-term abuse and financial exploitation. Following investigations and court proceedings, he was found guilty on multiple charges, including domestic violence and assault, threats and intimidation, theft of family funds and money intended for maternal support, fraud and financial abuse through misuse of entrusted money, and unauthorized access and control of a bank account without consent. The court delivered its judgment accordingly, issuing a prison sentence along with restitution orders for the stolen funds. Afterward, there was no celebration within the family, only silence. But it was a different kind of silence. No longer silence born from fear, but silence from healing. For Cheetah, it marked the end of years of emotional captivity. For Okon, it was justice finally completed. For Mrs. Madara, it was the first true sense of safety she had felt in a long time. In the days that followed, life slowly began to improve. Okon purchased a new house, a quiet, comfortable home where the family could finally live in safety. On the day they moved in, Mrs. Madara stood at the entrance, looking around in silence. Tears filled her eyes. "My son, is this truly for us?" she asked. Okon smiled. "Yes, mother. This is our home now." Cheetah stood beside her, holding her hand. "We are starting again," she said softly. Mrs. Madara nodded. "A new beginning," she replied. Peace returned to their lives, real peace. Okon made a decision to stay close this time, not only to provide support but to be present. They ate together, spoke together, and shared simple moments that now meant everything. In the evenings, they sometimes sat together reflecting on how far they had come. Gradually, gratitude replaced pain. Okon also supported Cheetah's work and agreed to sponsor her children's education. This story is a reminder that blind trust can lead to serious consequences. It is always important to ensure that the people you care for are truly safe and well. If Okon had questioned things earlier and looked deeper, he might have discovered his mother's situation sooner. If this story resonated with you, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. The next emotional story will be coming soon, so make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss it. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share it with others. You never know who might need to hear it. Thank you for watching and for your time.